Good morning, everybody. This is Michael from Spades Consulting. Now, there hasn't been a lot of content recently, my apologies, but I have been dealing with some quite nasty muscle spasms that have just refused to give up, and only now I'm at the point where it's not so uncomfortable to record or write, but I don't know, I'll get to the Substack at some point. Right now, we got a couple of topics to get through. And this one is spurred by a not so much interaction, but observation. So, going to the dentist's office a while back, um, one of the other clients of that dentist's office ended up getting into a back and forth with the office staff talking about how costs have gone up. This is compliance costs, this is costs in general, and shocker, inflation, cost of living going up. Of course, it's the number one topic of discussion for just about everybody now. Okay. Another client, whilst I'm sitting in the waiting room, another client comes in. Now, she was obviously new, didn't know exactly how things worked at that dentist's office, but she comes in and she stands in front of the unmanned, um, uh, what you would expect to be the receptionist desk. Okay. So even though there are multiple signs that say check in this way or that way, she just instantly drops down to her phone and she half under her breath chimes in this fidgety outburst of, yeah, because the kids are fucking stupid. In regards to what the other client was talking about with the staff in the back. And the thought instantly popped into my mind, like, you know what? I guarantee you the kids, being as stupid as they are, quote unquote, I guarantee you that the kids are not $50,000 plus in debt. Because this was a Gen X female. And you can immediately tell, like, okay, she's living beyond her means. She's definitely living beyond her means. And to say that the kids are stupid whilst being unable to look up and see the multiple signs that say check in this way, just added to that a little bit. She literally stood there for 10, 15 minutes because she couldn't look away from her phone once to read. Anyway, back on point, the kids are not stupid. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are not fucking stupid. They're refusing to play a game that they can't win. And this is the thing when it comes to debt specifically, because that's where I went to. When it comes to debt, the only people who win are the lenders. There's no winning in this game. There's no winning with the idea of 50-year mortgages. And even though it's quote unquote fake news, it won't be for too long. 15-year car notes. Okay, now 15-year car notes sounds ridiculous, and 50-year mortgages sounds ridiculous, but I mean, mortgages are literally death notes. Why not actually make them death notes? Anyway, we're gonna get a little deeper into this. For the boomers, the whole point of a job, the whole point of playing this game that we've been born into, for the boomers, the general idea or the standard model idea was you work a job to not just subsist, but to grow your standard of living over time. Now, with just about every generation and through multiple financial crises, The benefit to participating in this system, in this society, in this economy has been having just about every single crisis. Okay, with a perfect example being the millennials who were established in their jobs before 2008 are doing significantly better than the millennials who had to try to establish themselves in the aftermath. Okay? That's just one example. But if you look at it over time, all right, from the generations, starting with the boomers, they got the full effect, and then coming up behind them, Gen X got maybe a quarter, a half, maybe a quarter, depending on which side of a financial crisis they ended up starting their careers, quote unquote, because careers don't exist anymore. But depending on when they started their careers, if it was before, half, if it was after, a quarter, and then in terms of actual value. And then you get down to the millennials where they get an eighth of the real value to a 16th of the real value. And Gen Z is looking at a 16th to a 32nd. And Gen Alpha is looking at a 64th to 128th of the value for going out and working. Okay? It's not a reasonable option for a lot of the younger kids to participate in the system, especially to try to follow the standard model. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked for quite a while. Anyway, when it comes to, and just looking at the jobs, okay? Just looking at the jobs. As a generation, the boomers, with a little bit of help from Gen X, they pushed the idea of college pretty heavily. Okay? Whilst they had their positions of power in these organizations, they did everything they could to come up with ways to not hire people. And one of them, politely, because well, less so with the boomers, more so with Gen X. For the most part, they're too skitsy, too afraid to just say no to people. Um, so, especially for Gen X, they needed more reasonable excuses, all right, to not hire people. So it became the college education. Well, we're looking for a 2-year graduate or a 4-year graduate from X school or Y school. We need somebody who can really hit the ground running. Okay. So over time, they've systematically created so many restrictions, so many hurdles to jump over, so many paywalls to getting into anything. And this ties into the cost of compliance. It's not just compliance cost in the case of businesses, all right, and how this whole topic even started. There is an arc, okay? You can raise the tax rate, and I believe it's the Laffer curve. You can raise the tax rate to a certain extent. If you go above it, then people will either work less to avoid the higher taxes, or they will come up with new tax strategies to essentially skirt the taxes, whether that be setting up your corporation to be based in Ireland or another tax haven to escape the increased tax burdens. Okay. There is also a compliance curve with the labor market, and the kids are not being offered a fair deal. Most of the people who are working now are not being offered a fair deal. Okay, in terms of value, they're getting slaughtered. I mean, you look at it for what it is. You look at the millennials, just as an example. The millennials, along with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are effectively, in real value terms, they're lucky if they're making subsistence wages. Most of them, in real terms, in terms of real value, they're donating their time to these employers. Okay? A lot of people don't necessarily want to do the math behind that. They don't, and God knows they don't want to know that they've been effectively donating their time to these corporations, especially considering how much toxic fucking bullshit that they have to put up with at a lot of these companies. But it also, when you start digging into what's really fair, people tend to get more emotional and more likely to have outbursts and blow up. And, it's not a happy subject to tell people that, yeah, you've been effectively just giving your time away for nothing. All right. People get quite antsy and quite pissy about that. But back onto the regulation side. So you regulated all of these jobs into oblivion because honestly, a lot of it is you just didn't want to tell people no. You needed excuses. So the excuse was college. You require a degree for all of these jobs that easily could have been, you could take the average seventh grader, eighth grader, with a little bit of training, and they could do any of these jobs that are hidden behind the college degree wall. All right, and it's unreasonable. It's entirely unreasonable. And I mean, even working in a warehouse, this is an odd one. Do you know that there's now a college degree program focused on working for a fucking warehouse? This is a thing. There are warehouses that are actually starting to ask for that. And it's just like, are you kidding? Seriously. You want people to fucking go to college for a degree so they can move shit onto and off of trucks for a living? Where you're going to pay them like $20 an hour? I mean, it's more than the carpenters may make, but at least for the first couple of years. But it's a thing. Like the requirements are ridiculous. But there's this tunnel vision that's just pervasive. Anyway, it brought up in my mind a topic where we were talking about chemists and their position. Now, given there are plenty of jobs, well, I can't necessarily say that, but there are plenty of industries that could employ chemists. Obviously, if you need to make a new pesticide or herbicide or a new pharmaceutical, um, there's definitely room in the economy for chemists. But the amount of hoops that you have to jump through to, again, this comes to compliance, the amount of hoops that you have to jump through so you can hold a legal job and bear in mind, the restrictions eliminate the ability for people to operate in a legal manner in good faith to be good, hardworking, tax-paying citizens. Okay? The amount of hoops that you have to jump through to work for a pharmaceutical company are pretty fucking high. Okay? Now, when you take into account that for the vast majority of chemists, their only real option is to, in most cases, nearly all cases, their only option is to find employment. Now, given chemists could obviously go create their own things, but in terms of putting a roof over their head, yeah, they're gonna wanna get a normal job. Okay? They're gonna wanna get a job as an actual chemist. You've made, with all of these restrictions, you've made the costs of participating in the economy legally nearly fucking impossible. Now, we're only starting to see this now, but it's gonna go nuclear, okay? And I can guarantee this. It is gonna go nuclear. You do not need a college to learn chemistry. You can buy chemistry textbooks. You can learn this shit on your own. I forget what company. Oh god, one of the big ones. It's based in the Carolinas, I think. What is it? Give me 1 second here. Chemistry supply company. What? Unusual? Are you kidding me? You're gonna do a CAPTCHA for searches now? What the fuck is this? Oh, my god. Oh, I forget. I forget what the hell it was called. I remember it from back in the day. They may have changed. Anyway, there are plenty of chemistry supply companies. You can buy beakers and entire rigs and setups to do chemistry, to practice chemistry. Okay? And God knows there's plenty of channels here on YouTube. One of the bigger ones is Nile Red. Okay? You do not need college to become a chemist. You need the college degree and sign-offs and paperwork in order to be employed as one. At what point do you think it's going to take when you essentially make it impossible to operate legally within the system? Okay, having reasonable restrictions is one thing. But when you make it impossible for people to legally use the skills that they have, they are going to be inclined to use those skills for illegal purposes. Okay? This is the point. This is the overall point that I want to try to get across here. The kids do not benefit. There is no benefit in them going into the system, borrowing tons of money, and jumping through all these hoops to participate legally within the system. Okay? Now, this is not me saying that, the kids should go out and just start cooking up meth or something. This is just getting the point across that if you make it too difficult for people to get jobs, they're going to be more inclined over time, especially as the cost of living goes up and the overall job market declines. You are asking for problems. Okay? If you make it impossible for somebody of course, you're not going to make it impossible for somebody to go to college to become a chemist because there's tons of money to be made there off of the young and dumb who have hopes and dreams. But if you make it impossible for them to get a job, they're still chemists. They still know how to make all sorts of things. They still know how to make fertilizers. They still know how to make simpler pharmaceuticals. They still know how to do all of this based on their education. If you don't offer them, if this system refuses to offer them legal venues to use these skills to better society, It is only a matter of time before they start turning to illegal venues. And the first thought that came to my mind, so I've talked to quite a few truckers over the years. Eh, For example, back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of gas stations and truck stops, they had these glass vases. Okay. Now, off the top of your head, you might ask yourself a question: why in the hell would you have flower vases at a truck stop? Okay. The inquiring mind wants to know. The reason why there were these specific vases at truck stops was you could smash one of the ends off and you would have a pipe. Okay? Now, going forward, another thing that gas stations and truck stops used to sell was liquid ephedrine. Okay? Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Now, I'm not a chemist. I have many skills under my belt, but I am not a chemist. I could tell you personally, because downers are frowned upon, all right, and tend to be more damaging. The overall society and economy seems to be very welcoming of uppers, especially considering, for instance, Amazon warehouses. Amazon warehouses run on a lot of uppers and a lot of prescriptions for uppers, and tend to, when Amazon starts up in an area, a bunch of alarm bells get triggered because immediately the pharmacists are looking out and they're saying, okay, we might have a pill mill in the area. Okay. And then you find out that as part of, benefits for the employees, of course, you have things like Amazon's version of Teledoc, essentially. And then in addition to it, they also have Amazon Pharmacy, which can, send all the pills out. The system is more welcoming of uppers, and just because they create more productive employees. Now, it may burn their employees out quicker, and their employees' brains might turn to the slow motion mush that you normally expect from one of my videos when I am talking and then have these bouts where I just stop randomly for fucking ages. But I do these at like what? It's like 1:18 in the morning right now, so I'm kind of fried. Again, my apologies for that. But regardless, the overall economy is quite welcoming of uppers. Okay? If I was a chemist, my first instinct, outside of making rocket fuel, would be to make liquid ephedrine for personal consumption, of course. So that way I can stay up for days and just generate more and more articles for the Substack so I can get more work done in the same amount of time. You would be surprised. Warren Buffett back in the day said if you can't figure out a way to make money in your sleep, you're going to be poor, essentially. And it's just like, that's true. That's true. If you can't find a way to make money when you're asleep, you are kind of screwed because there are automated systems that are constantly working round the clock to generate money. And the people who have access to those systems are the same billionaires who tell us that you should expect to, if you want to succeed, work 80 hours a week minimum. Okay? Which is, I'm not going to lie to you, it's incredibly toxic and it's disgusting, but it's not surprising to hear it coming from these people. Anyway, the economy is very fair towards uppers. my first instinct as a chemist would be to create ephedrine. Now, given I'm not a chemist and ephedrine is, or ephedrine, however you want to say it, is regulated. It is a regulated substance because it is a precursor to the obvious, okay, amphetamine. It does not make sense for the kids to participate in this system because the barriers to benefiting from the legal venues are too damn high and too damn restrictive. What I think the economy is going to become, unless we hit the utopian automation, everything's automated, everybody collects a welfare check essentially. What I kind of imagine the world's going to turn into is a bunch of backyard chemists eventually realizing that the only way that they're going to be able to keep a roof over their head is to do chemistry and start benefiting from legal venues. Okay? There's honestly nothing really more I can add to that other than this is the system that we've been born into. And I cannot personally, on a personal level, I cannot blame people who, through an inability to legally participate in the economy, I can't necessarily blame people for starting to shift towards the illegal venues to try to keep a roof over their head. All right. And this is honestly one thing that tends to be problematic for the left because the left is, bleeding heart and, oh my God, all these poor people. But it is a thing. It is a thing. People who have actually tried to better their lives, people who've jumped through a decent amount of hoops, okay? People who've been unnecessarily kicked out of the legal venues, the legal means to participate in the economy, I can't blame them if they decide to start benefiting from the not so legal venues. Okay? I can't blame them. All right, cost of living is high. Keeping a roof over your head is expensive. Keeping gas in the car and keeping the cars running is expensive. Life overall is expensive. Okay? Calling the kids stupid. Okay? Calling the kids stupid when refusing to look at things for what they are is fucking childish and just far too simple-minded. Now, given obviously it came from a chick who probably spent more time. Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't go there, but it makes me think sometimes. I don't know. I don't know where else to go with this. I guess I'll end it here. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Michael from Spades Consulting. Check out the Substack. Eventually, I will get to it. If you'd like to subscribe to the Substack, I believe it's $5 a month, but there is a higher value discount on services from spadesconsulting.com for your personal and business advisory needs. And I think that's it. I think I covered everything. You guys have a good one, and I will see you next time.